Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're just going to get started in about 5 minutes. We called this for 8:05, so you can sit back and relax for another 5 minutes, and then we will start shortly. Hey, everyone. We're going to get started shortly. We called it for 8:05, so we're just going to give people a few more minutes to get going. Alan, I'm going to remain unmuted while you're leading Mincha. So just don't be surprised. We're going to make sure that Hector can spotlight you and that you can be unmuted. But I'll also be unmuted to call page numbers and all those kinds of things. Hi, Brent. Good to see you. I don't know what you just said. Say it one more time.
Around the corner.
I am around the corner. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Alan, do you have something to ask? Hold on, I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? Is it possible? Maybe Hector will unmute you. Hector, if you're listening, Alan has a question. It'd be great if he could be unmuted.
I am unmuted.
Oh, there you go, Alan. Great. And now Alan Wax. Sorry, Hector. That was good. Good to keep Alan Broidy unmuted, but now Alan Wax has a question.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there were two Allens. I'm assuming I'm not the one leading Mincha. So
Correct. Oh, yes. Sorry.
good.
I was talking to Alan
Awesome.
Broidy. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Good clarifying question. I'm just going to go get some water. I will be back in just 1 second, and then we'll begin.
Okay.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
David, very good to see you, David.
So Alan, we will get started in just about 1 minute.
Okay.
Hector, we're gonna need for Alan Broidy. He has a number 1 next to his name. Yeah, very good. To be spotlit. Very good. And Alan, I'll call page numbers, and then when we get to Torah service, I'll read the Aliyot, and then we'll do the El Maleh for your dad, and then I'll have you continue on in the service.
That'll be fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Just waiting for my clock to turn to 8:05. Then we'll just... it did. Okay, fantastic. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Alan Broidy is going to be leading for us today in memory and in honor of his father. So we'll begin with Mincha. If you're in the Lev Shalom, it's on page 214. If you're in the single volume Sim Shalom, it's on page 226. And if you're in the full volume Sim Shalom, it's on page 558.
Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yalucha sela. Ashram shakacha lo, ashram roshan ra'elahav. Tila David. Tilat anayada bepi, vivarecha basoshen kochel elam vahed, vanachnu echya, metav yad olam, hallelujah, uva l'tzion goel, v'shoveh pesha b'Yaakov. ואתה קדוש השבתי לו ישראל, וקרא זלזל ואמר, קדוש 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 ענה צבאות, מלוך על הארץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח ושמע אחרי קורש גדול, ברוך הוא אדוני ממקומו. Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Titenem le'Yaakov chesed v'avraham. ויבטחו בך יודעי שמך, כי לא עזבתו ראשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויאדיר.
Thank you, Alan. We're going to pause now for a moment to do the Torah service. So Hector, we can come back over to me for a few moments. When I was looking over the Parsha to be able to read these three aliyot for you, I realized that this was my bat mitzvah maftir. So because I had Shabbat Para, which you can see the very nice certificate in the back right here, I was Parashat Kiti Sa Shabbat Para, and the Shabbat Para Maftir are the verses that I'm about to read for you. So I feel very honored to be able to read these verses. And I just wanted to say before I use my voice that Alan, and it is really a pleasure to hear you daven. There are many voices that ring in my head when I think of Shabbat Mincha at Temple Beth Am, and yours is definitely a prominent one of them. And it was just very heartwarming to get to hear your voice sing these words for us again. So thank you so much for doing that. We are going to be reading from Numbers, from Bamidbar, chapter 19, verses 1 through 17. And I'm just going to go straight through those verses since we don't have aliyot. I will say the blessing of allowing me to busy myself in these words of Torah, and then I will read the aliyot for you. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. וידבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור זאת חוקת התורה אשר ציווה אדוני לאמור דבר בני ישראל ויקחו אליך פרה אדומה תמימה אשר אין בה מום אשר לא עלה עליה עול, ונתתם אותה אל אלעזר הכהן, והוציא אותה אל מחוץ למחנה, ושחט אותה לפניו, ולקח אלעזר הכהן מדמה באצבעו, והיזה אל נוח פני המועד מדמה 7 פעמים, ושרף את הפרה לעיניו, את אורה ואת בשרה ואת דמה על פרשה ישרוף, ולקח הכהן עץ ארז ואזוב ושני תולעת, והשליך אל תוך שרפת הפרה, וכיבס בגדיו הכהן, ורחץ בשרו במים, ואחר יבוא אל המחנה, וטמא הכהן עד הערב, והשורף אותה יכבס בגדיו במים, ורחץ בשרו במים, וטמא עד הערב, ואסף איש טהור את אפר הפרה, והניח מחוץ למחנה במקום טהור, והייתה לעדת בני ישראל למשמרת למי נידה חטאתי, וכיבס האוסף את אפר הפרה את בגדיו, וטמא עד הערב, והייתה לבני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם לחוקת עולם, הנוגע באמת לכל נפש אדם, וטמא 7 ימים. הוא יתחטא בו ביום השלישי, וביום השביעי טהר, ואם לא יתחטא ביום השלישי וביום השביעי לא יטהר. כל הנוגע באמת בנפש האדם אשר ימות ולא יתחטא, את משכן אדוני טימא, ונכרתה הנפש ההיא מישראל, כי מנידה לא זורק עליו טמא, יהיה עוד טומאתו בו. זאת התורה, אדם כי ימות באוהל, כל הבא אל האוהל וכל אשר באוהל יטמא 7 ימים, וכל כלי פתוח אשר אין צמיד פתיל עליו טמא הוא, וכל אשר ייגע על פני השדה בחל חרב או במת או בעצם אדם או בקבר יטמא 7 ימים, ולקחו לטמא מעפר שרפת החטאת, ונתן עליו מים חיים אל כלי. There's a really beautiful something about having a bar or bat mitzvah parsha, that there were moments there where it didn't even matter if I was looking at the trope, it just kind of came back to me, which is it's a really powerful thing to be able to experience. So as we would do if we were in a mincha service together at Betham, we would ask if there were any yard sites, and Alan wrote to me earlier this week to mention that it was in fact the yard site of his father this upcoming week. Monday, you said, Alan? Monday, okay. So I'm going to ask Hector that you can unmute Alan, though I'm going to still be singing for a few moments. I'm going to sing the El Male, and then Alan, I'll ask you to rise, even though there's not a Sefer Torah in your home. I'll ask you to rise as if we were holding onto the Torah to say an El Male for your dad. David, do you also have an El Male? Yes, okay. So Hector, David Kaplan, who has his hand up, will also unmute him, and I'll do an El Male for him as well. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהרים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת זאב בן לאה ויהודה, שהלך לעולמו, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. Ana bal harachamim, hastirehu beseter knafecha leolamim, utzror bitzor hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, ve'anuch b'shalom amishkavo, ve'nomar amen.
And thank you. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. My father died 61 years ago in 1959 when I was 4 years old. I barely knew my father. He was a pioneer in television, did a TV series called Wild Bill Hickok. Dov and Verd, you might remember that, but reruns or something. Perhaps with David Kaplan, you might know that. Yes. And that was a William F. Brody production. He also gave Angie Dickinson one of her first roles in his movies. He did a number of B movies, including one of them that was called Shack Out on Highway 101, which was became a cult hit to deal with what would happen if there was an atomic attack in Malibu in the 1950s. And I remember watching the movie on VHS, and you could see Malibu in a pristine state in the mid 1950s. It was something. He died much too early, and my mother never remarried, but I think she did a good job raising my two older sisters and me. And I just want to be able to remember him for his goodness, for marrying a wonderful woman and having me and my two sisters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan. What a beautiful way to remember your father, who, though, as you said, you didn't know for very long, clearly had an impact on you and on your life. And we are so blessed and glad that he brought you to us. So, Yehi Zichro Baruch, may his memory forever be a blessing. David, who is your yard site for?
It's for my mother,
Your mother. And what was her name?
Edel Bat Osher Sarah.
Okay.
Edel Bat Osher Vasara.
Great, great. If for some reason between now and 10 seconds from now I forget that, I might pause and ask you to recite her name for me. Etel bat Osher Verchana.
Sarah.
Sarah. Okay. El malei rachamim, shochen bamramim, hametze menucha nechona, tachat kanfei השכינה. במעלות קדושים וטהרים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת את הבת אושר ושרה, והלכה לעולמה, בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה, אנה בעל הרחמים, הסתיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמת Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach b'shalom amishkava, v'nomar amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Is there anything you would like to share about your mom with us, David?
Just she was a very sweet woman. She loved to cook. She had boxes upon boxes of recipes, and often experimented with new foods. And we were always delighted that she did it. And in her last years, I think that was her main source of joy, is preparing meals for all of us. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, and just so poignant that we can be remembering two very inspiring parents, and to be able to bring both a mother and a father into this space. So Yehi Zichra Baruch, may her memory forever be a blessing. Alan, I'll ask you to continue our mincha service. Musaf, our mincha service for us. We will actually begin together with the Silent Amidah, which will be found on page 223 in the Lev Shalem, page 234 in the Sim Shalom, or page 574 in the full volume Sim Shalom. So though Alan will be spotlit and will be unmuted, we will all be saying our Amidah silently in a whisper. if you've not finished, if you have not yet completed your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. Zoom seems to take words right out of my mouth. We are going to continue now with the Aleinu on page 231, page 248, or page 598.
Aleinu l'shabeach Adon HaKol. ונאמר והיה למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ירונה אחד ושמו אחד.
So Alan, I will ask you to lead us in Kaddish Yatom in the mourner's Kaddish, and I will recite Amen. If there's anybody else, and I can see that there are a few others on this call who are still reciting mourner's Kaddish or observing a yahrzeit, please rise and say it along with Alan, even though we will not be able to hear you unmuted.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
ועלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומייכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה וזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי עולמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה וכו'. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Yasher koach again, Alan, and to you and to David. We send our condolences because grief and that need for support does not go away no matter how many years and how long ago. So we know that your mother and your father will forever be a blessing in your minds, and thank you for sharing their stories so that we too can keep them in our thoughts as well. So we're now going to do a little bit of teaching. I can only see a few faces, and those of you who, Lori Tussle just joined the crew, and those of you who don't have your video on, so I guess the only people left are the Bacharachs. If you would like to have your video on, the Bacharachs, you can have your video on. If not, don't worry about it. No pressure. I just wanted you to be able to participate in the learning if you would like to, and I can only call on you if I can see you. So if you have your source sheet, we are going to be going through this pretty quick. Thank you, Brant. We're going to be going through this pretty quickly because I want to make sure that we're all doing Havdalah on time. If you don't have your source sheet, you can actually just, Bacharachs, we're all here. Very nice. So you can actually just look in a Tanakh or even just a Bible if you would like. We're going to be at Numbers 20, chapter 20, verse 3. And we're going to just go through from chapter 20, verse 3 through chapter 20, verse 13. And then there are a few commentaries on here, but I'll share those aloud if you don't have the source sheet in front of you. So my big question for us tonight, and for those of you on live stream, I hope you are thinking of questions that I'm happy to answer at another time. My question tonight is it actually clear that once Moshe is told he's not going to go into the land, that he actually cares? It's not clear from this part of our story. We're not going to talk about whether or not later on, down the road, before this, anything like that. We're just going to take this moment in time and think about, are we sure that Moshe really had any desire to go into the land? Was it something that he expected to do? Was it something that he knew was not going to happen for him anyway, so the punishment really wasn't that big of a punishment, just like when we tell a kid that we're going to put them in timeout, but they know they really have like 5 more times until they go into timeout, and so they just do whatever they're doing until we actually send them into a timeout. Is that the case that we're working on here? What is it that makes us so moved by the fact that Moshe doesn't go into the land when it doesn't seem like Moshe is so moved by the fact that Moshe doesn't go into the land. So I'm going to read straight through. I might have a few comments here and there. If you have a comment, physically raise your hand, and then Hector hopefully will see you and be able to unmute you. So again, we're starting chapter 20, verse 3. I'm going to do all of this in English just so that we're all on the same page. The people quarreled with Moshe, saying, if only we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of Adonai. So just so that we're all kind of getting context for where we are, the people are complaining again. No big surprise. We like to complain. We're a good complaining people. And so here they are again, complaining to Moshe. If you could have just left us how we were, we would have been fine. Why have you brought Adonai's congregation, us, into this wilderness for us and our beasts to die there? All right, so I didn't read that correctly in terms of English inflection. Why did you bring us here for us and our beasts to die? Okay, why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place, a place with no grain, no figs, no vines or pomegranates, so no land of plenty? There's not even water to drink. Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. If you were with us this morning, you heard me talk a little bit about falling on their faces. So here we are again, this moment of supplication and prayer. And the presence of Adonai appeared to them. And Adonai spoke to Moses and said, you and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes speak to the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. Moses took the rod, from before Adonai as God had commanded them. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock? Like, look what I'm going to do, guys. I have a trick up my sleeve. And Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. So what do we all know? We know that he was supposed to talk to the rock. He didn't talk, he hit, right? So very basic preschool skills that clearly Moshe doesn't have. Use your words, not your actions, right? So he didn't do that. He was clearly fed up with the fact that everyone seems to be complaining all the time. I'm going to just get this water to come out right now the way that I know how. Okay. This is the big moment here. Adonai says to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me, God, enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given to them. Those are the waters of Merivah. It's just, this is the next line that happens, meaning that the Israelites quarreled with Adonai, through which God affirmed God's sanctity. Okay. The reason I gave you that last line is because I wanted you to see that there was no response. We go from God saying to Moshe, you're not going into this land, to us being told what the waters were called, right? There's nothing here about what Moshe has to say. So as I wrote on this source sheet, I wrote, hello, Moses, like, do you care? We seem to be working really hard to get into this land. You seem to not care at all once God says you're not going. And God is not particular about why, right? It just says, you didn't trust me enough. You didn't affirm to the people my sanctity, right? The people now don't know that I'm good for what I said I was good for. And therefore, you're not going to lead them in. Now, it sounds like a reasonable punishment, because if you're not going to show the people that I am actually their leader and you are just the human on the ground able to lead for me, well then sure, you shouldn't go into the land. It's a reasonable punishment. But anybody who is getting something so grand, something that you've worked your whole life for, taken away, you would think there would be something that he had to say, right? In our Torah, Rabbi Sean Fieldsmeyer taught me this sentence has an economy of language, right? The Torah uses words in a way that the Torah wants us to understand something. So it's not just that, oh, well, God, people, whatever you believe, decided not to put that in the Torah. No. If the Torah wanted us to know that this was something important, it would have been in there. So the importance actually comes in the silence, the fact that it's not there. There is nothing that Moshe then says. So what does the silence do here? Does anybody have any thoughts? I'm happy to hear other voices. No? Okay. What does the silence do here? The silence somehow seems to imply that Moshe is condoning this this punishment, right? He's somehow saying like, all right, I guess you're right, that I did a bad thing. I shouldn't be going into the land. So sorry. I guess someone else will have to lead the people. Right? Which we don't want to think that Moshe's that kind of leader. Why did Moshe spend all this energy getting us out of Egypt if with one fell swoop, God could just say, I'm going to actually take that away, and Moshe would just say, all right, well, I had a good run. Right? And I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek about this, but it's all because there's nothing here. You would expect Moshe to say something. Now, Moshe is not a man of many words. We know that from his past. We also know that from the future after this story. But it does seem to us that when Moshe feels the need, again, I spoke a little bit, I didn't realize this until I'm speaking right now. I spoke a little bit about this earlier this morning. Moshe is the kind of leader that does go to God and say, excuse me, that's not what you said to me. Can I help you edit that? Can I help you reframe the way in which you're actually going to lead our people with your words? So Moshe could have said something. It's not that Moshe's too tame. Moshe didn't know how. Moshe could have said something, and Moshe says nothing. So I want us to look at a few commentaries here and see what this silence possibly could be telling us. Now, for those of you who can think back a few parshiot, when Aaron's sons die, there is a word for that silence, right? So that a silence kind of comes across Aaron, and that's why there are no words. The rabbis have a lot of fun talking about what that word for silence is in that parsha and what that seems to connote. But here there's not even that. There's not even the mention of silence. They just move on. And for us as humans, we know that moving on is not easy. Whether it's something really joyous or something really sad, you don't just at the flip of a switch. Yeah, flip of a switch. You don't just move on to the next thing. You have to take time. You have to figure out, why did this happen? You have to think it through. You don't just start naming the waters, right? You have to really sit with this. So the Vilna Gaon, okay, used to go. This is from a commentary on this particular passage that I didn't give you all of, but you're more than welcome to read it on your own. The Vilna Gaon used to go on for days fasting, not on food, but on words. So he would eat all he wanted, right? But he was silent. According to his ethical letter, the Igeret Hagra, which is where this comes from, a person should afflict himself the entirety of his remaining days, not by fasting of food, but rather by fasting of one's own mouth. There is power in silence, right? What the Vilna Gaon is saying here is that, especially, he's talking about the end of his days, right? But at any time, if you are asked to be silent, or you're asked to just take stock of what's going on for you, meditation, silent retreats, all those kinds of things are things that people are doing many times now in our day to be able to just clear their minds, to be able to think about what it looks like to be with your own thoughts. A few years ago, some of you know this, a few years ago, I had surgery on my vocal cords. I had what's called a polyp on my vocal cord, and I had to have it removed. And one of the ways of healing through that kind of surgery is to not speak for 3 weeks. And I like to speak. I'm a person who enjoys speaking with people. I'm a rabbi. I think, yeah, I kind of have to like to speak. But there was something extremely powerful about just listening. Not always happy with what I was hearing, but I couldn't speak back. I had no ability to speak back. I do not believe that's what's happening here. I think Moshe did have the ability, but maybe he somehow felt like it was better to just listen, better to just sit with the punishment and kind of take in whatever was next to come. Okay, this is another commentary. Actually, I believe this. I believe this comes from the same. Oh no, sorry. This comes from Breshit Rabbah. I didn't write this clearly. Sorry. Out of that silence, God may speak. Okay, so what we're saying here in this midrash is not only was this silence for Moshe, but if there's silence, then maybe God was going to have a moment to continue God's thought with Moshe. Our early sages imagined that since the dawn of time, God has been calling out to every person at every moment. Abraham was simply the first person to be silent enough to notice. God has been calling out of a bush of flame. Moses was simply the first person silent enough to notice. So maybe it's just that we need there to be no speaking to know what's going to happen next, because that's when God is going to lay that path for us so that we know what's next to come. Again, I'm not completely satisfied by this because God has already spoken. So is it possible that God said something privately in prayer to Moshe? Sure, definitely possible. If I were me, I would want to see that in the Torah. I would want to see what those words were so that Moshe at least has some emotion and whether or not he's going to move on or not. So this next piece is from just modern day world. And I looked up what being silent does to our brain, what it does to us as a society, because as we know, it is very hard for us to be silent. It's very hard for us to not, if I ask, does anybody have any questions? If I don't see a hand within the first 30, 45 seconds, maybe even that's too long, I move on because we're uncomfortable in that silence. Kendra Chorney spoke about that at the beginning of this pandemic in a sermon, actually. Remaining silent also can represent a risk. James E. Lukaszewski, I said that name definitely wrong, but his name is written here, so he's getting credit, believes that in today's world of overwhelming chatter and information overload, silence is the most toxic strategy to reputation and integrity. If we remain silent, someone else will fill the void with more made-up chatter and misinformation. James believes that managing your destiny is up to you. He advocates a very specific strategy to keep your own record straight. So this is what I want to end with. I know there's another commentary on here, but I hope that you'll just take a look at those questions and think about them for yourself. This is what I want to end with, because I think that there is power in a very noisy world right now. Yes, it might be more quiet because there are not as many roads on the car. Yes, it might be more quiet because you're not going out as often. But in a way, the world is actually much louder than it usually is because we're reading the news, we're looking for statistics, we're trying to figure out different plans of emerging. All of these different things are clouding our brains with a lot of noise. A lot of that noise is good noise. I am not trying to say that it is bad. And I think that a little bit of silence is also great. I know that many people have spoken about how Shabbat, even if you were Shomer Shabbat before, Shabbat now, during this pandemic, when you might assume, Shabbat, like every day is like Shabbat right now. No. There is something special and silent about putting away your devices, your email, your Zoom, though we're on Zoom right now. But anyway, go with me. Putting those things away and just being able to have some silence, just some rest, just some Shabbat. So what I want to believe here is that Moshe was silent, and yet Moshe could have said something. Moshe could have let me, Rebecca Schatz, feel a little bit more comforted in him as a leader if he felt something. I think that the silent here is detrimental to him as a leader and detrimental to his character. Because though he takes us along and he does a great job in getting us to the precipice of that land, we don't actually know what he could have done better, or at least with more feeling, had there been something here in between his punishment and just moving on. So I have extreme reverence and honor and just respect for Moshe and for his leadership. And this is a moment where I would look to him to say something, to tell us something. There are many moments to be silent, but I don't think this was one of them. So I hope that in hearing this and in listening to me and in listening to this teaching, that we can all go into a week that I am sure will be loud and I am sure will be noisy, and can find those moments where the noise is important, where those voices, where speaking up is important, and also where those moments of silence bring us great introspection and great moments of thought and being able to just sit with that which is to come. We're going to move on to Mariv. And if you are in the Lev Shalem, it is on page 264. If you're in the Sidur Sim Shalom, it's on page 281. And if you're in the full volume Sim Shalom, it's on page 200. I just have to follow my own instructions. What did I say? 264. והוא רחום יכפר עוון ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיב אפו ולא ירקוך חמתו. אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קוראנו. ברוך אתה אדוני למלך העולם אשר בדברו אמר דברים בכל מחמת ישרים. ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך תרמת וחיים ושתית. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. אל מלך נאמן שמע ישראל. אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך ובביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאור על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, והים שמות. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם ומן הכל זו קיים עלינו. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה מרים ובני ישראל לכנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקעם לפני משה זה לי אנו, ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל, השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו שלום עלינו. Ushemor tzeitenu voin l'chaim u'shalom yatave ad olam. Baruch ata Adonai, shomer amo Yisrael le'ad. We'll turn now to the whispered Amidah. In the Lev Shalom, it's on page 270. In the Sim Shalom, page 286. And in the full volume Sim Shalom, page 210. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, imru, amen. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru, imru, amen. If you have not yet finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We are going to turn now to, I don't know how to tell you where this is in your Siddur, because unfortunately I don't have it written out for all the different Siddurim, but it starts Vehi Noam. It's right after Chatzi Kaddish in the Lev Shalom. It's on page 279. The Chatzi Kaddish in these other Siddurim, maybe this will help you, is on page 292 and page 682 in the full volume Sim Shalom. So maybe that will help you. Brant is telling me. It is on page 6, 8, I can't see the last number, 4. It's on page 684 in the full volume Sim Shalom. Wow, it's very helpful. Thank you, Brant. יקראני ונהו עמך, אנוכי בצרה חלצהו, ואכבדי אורחמים אספיהו ויראו בשועתי, אורחמים אספיהו ויראו בשועתי. If you're able to do so, please rise for the Aleinu, page 281, page 297, and page 696. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשינו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורר עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, אין עוד, אין עוד, אין עוד. Alan Wax, would you like to lead us in? Great. Warner's Cottage. So I can now unmute you all now that Shabbat is over. Warner's Cottage is on page 282 in the Lev Shalem, page 298 in the Sim Shalom, and page 698 in the full volume.
Yikara, Yikara, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yomad, Yivrach, Yertev, Yamlicha, Yitei, Yithayachon, Yvomechon, Yithayed, the full Beit Yisrael, Stagalah, Yizman, Kari, Yomir, Amen.
Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah.
Yishmei Rabbah, Avrach, Leoma, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitar, Yitman, Yitzay, Yitzatar, Yitzala, Yitzala, Shmei Kedusha, Bereshus. Leila, Mikol, Birchata, Bishirata, Tushbachata, Benechamata, Damiram, Belma, Bimru, Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Shalom, Rabbi Mishmaya, Bethayim, Malani, Belko Israel, Bimru, Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom, Birmav, Louis Oseh Shalom, Alani, Belko Israel, Bimru, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Alan. I love hearing the little kiddos in the background there. We are going to do a quick Havdalah. I'm just going to turn off my lights so that you're getting the full thing here. Just give me 1 second. Yanai nanai nai nai yanai nanai nai yanai yanai nanai nai nai yanai nanai nai 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 yana nai 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 yana nai 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 yana nai yana nai 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 Yaina naina naina nai Hine el Yeshuati Eftach velo efchad Ki ozi vezimratia Adonai vayehi li lishua Ushaftem mai besason Mimanei Yeshua Ladonai Yeshua Alamcha virchatecha sela Adonai tzevaot imanu Miskavlanu Elohei Yaakov Sela Adonai Tzevaot Ashrei Adam Boteach Bach Adonai Yoshia Hamelech Yaneinu Veyom Koreinu La Yehudim Hayta ora vesimcha vesason veikar kendi elanu kosi Yeshua tesa uveshem Adonai ekra yaina nai yana nai 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 yaina nai yana nai 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 Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei v'samim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh. Feel free to use my flame if you don't have one. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshech ben Yisrael le'amim ben yom hashvi'i le'sheshet yamei hamaseh. Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. I'm not going to blow this out yet because then you won't be able to see me. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol chatoteinu imcho zareinu v'chaspein yarbe yarbe kacho v'hakochavim ala la zareinu v'chaspeinu v'yarbe kacho v'hakochavim ala la. Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hatishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agiladi, Bimera ve'yameinu, Yavo Eleinu, Imashiach ben David, Imashiach ben David. Shavua Tov, everyone. It was so great to see you. We're going to do Zoom out of Shabbat if you would like to join us for that as well. I believe it started 3 minutes ago, but I will be just as late as you are if you would like to join me. And I will see you soon. Shavua Tov. I hope this is a beautiful, beautiful week.